Welcome, everyone. Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, I've recently got back into with my major research into using scalar radionic machines for justice purposes. Have been looking at the information that was been out there for many years, and of course, there are these particularly types of weapons, particularly high power microwave weapons, strategic and operational implications for warfare by an Ellen M. Walling, an Air Force woman. And I found a lot of information on YouTube from apparently 60 Minutes, the famous news program on CBS from the United States for over, I don't know, it's one of the longest running shows. I'm assuming it's still running out there. Did some interviews with people that were affected by these, what is now called the Havana syndrome, where apparently the U.S. Embassy was hit by these kind of weapons. And of course, this is not new. The embassy in Russia, I believe, was also Moscow, was also hit by these beam weapons, and many people in these embassies, particularly in Moscow, developed all sorts of cancers and other things. And of course, the famous effects of the Havana syndrome is what a lot of people have been reporting in general of these kind of directed energy beam weapons. And we're not really sure what this energy is and how they're targeting, but it is pretty fascinating. This report, of course, which is over 20 years old and has been obviously declassified to be sold, is fascinating. Of course, hardly anybody gets these kind of reports. They're very expensive, they're very brief, and they talk in a circle of military nonsense. I'm not sure what the military knows, period. They like to say they're all powerful and can do everything. When it really comes down to it, they're as impotent as a flea. So the whole idea is that we have to look at this. And what does that actually mean? So microwaves are very fascinating, and the 60-minute special, which I believe it's on YouTube. If I can find it again, I'll put the link down below, but you can hunt for it yourself. Is a long special. They did several specials or interviews with military personnel on this subject over the last years, and they kind of put them all together, and it is pretty interesting. Of exactly how these kind of sneaky, devious, and weapons that make you disabled without killing you. Basically, it's a form of torture have been used. What the confusion is what are they? Well, I believe that the Russians who have been working on radionic psychotronic microwave weapons for many years and doing research into it have developed a hybrid microwave type, quote, scalar energy, quote, radionic type device. And of course, if you're a professional researcher like myself, the expert in this entire field for over 50 years now, you can pick out of interviews and conversations important information that can be very telling. Certainly, the military doesn't know any of that. The boobus idiots that are in the military that basically are the lowest caliber of people you can get in the U.S. military, and all militaries for that matter, who are just really psychotic, self-dictating freaks, certainly don't know anything about this. I'm not sure what they're doing, how they're doing it, or what kind of people, but the people we've seen that get involved in psyops and other things seem to be the lowest caliber. And of course, the U.S. Army didn't have any problem keeping Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino, the famous Satanist and pretty much strange, weird, donkey-headed freak that he was, employed for many, many years until he got tied up in some child molestation, which ultimately brought him down, but apparently not out because he transferred, so he states, to a secret place doing weapons like this in Colorado. We can't verify that, but once his contract was canceled in the regular monkey military, where's my ash? I need a flashlight. So it's dark. I can't find my ash. I'm Army. I'm a special forces guy. But babies can I kill? So the whole idea is that this is the kind of things that you run into. So I had no problem hiring him, keeping him on, and him perpetrating his sick reality. Now, from my research, just to give that thing a closure here, it doesn't appear that Aquino, other than being a freak and a Satanist, was involved in any child molestation cases. It doesn't appear any evidence to prove that, but you can't get any information anyway. And of course, this goes to a long story, but you can check those out on my by searching for them on my channel here. But there's been a long history of potential problems. They believe that a American submarine that was on its, I believe, its maiden voyage may have been sunk by Russian radionic technology or psychotronic technology. And certainly psychotronic weapons and machines are very fascinating and highly suppressed. The one thing you could never get from Russia was psychotronic tools, while if you wanted to, you could buy a MiG, a missile, and everything else. And at that time, I contacted some Russians, and they said, this is, you get involved in this and you end up in the river, meaning they kill you. And I'm sure that is the point. So there's an awful lot of literature on this in Russian that's never been translated, or at least not to the general public. And that was the case in the 70s as well. And a lot of that was translated by certain people of what they were doing. But, the whole idea of translating everything is a costly and big project. So we haven't translated stuff even from the Crusades right now. So we do have that information and we do know how to translate it. But who is going to pay all that money to get a very highly trained professor in medieval languages to go in there and translate it? And is their work any good either? So it's a very tricky area. Translations is something that this organization has been doing for some time and will continue to do, particularly when translation softwares weren't too good. But that is changing, baby. But we'll see how all that goes. But not much information goes from one language to the other, except English, it goes to everything else. But you're not going to find text coming from Czechoslovakia or Serbia or other places that are available in English, even if they're scientific. Now, science, as with everything else in the world, has its own language, and that language is English. So if you're a doctor, a pilot, a captain of a ship, a guy who stirs taffy on the pier, your language is English, so you can communicate your ideas to other people. But of course, this is something that egotistical, rotten countries tend to fight, wanting to have it in their own backwards Arabic language, as most of these countries do. So it is a problem. But let's get back to this. Now, microwave weapons is a complicated thing, and what's curious about all of it is how are people being affected from great distances? What brings this into the, quote, scalar radionic reality is these seems to be done from a distance, and people are targeted in certain areas. Now, we're not sure how all this is being done. There's a few ways that it could be done. It's a very complicated subject where I would get into. But generally, these are line of sight weapons. If you use a microwave weapon on somebody, you have to, which is a fairly large device, not that large. It depends on what you're doing with it. You would have to then have it in a line of sight to do it. So you'd have to, and generally microwaves will go through most anything, but they don't necessarily go through metal easily. Your microwave oven is a microwave weapon if you targeted that. And the whole idea is you're producing microwaves, and they're kept within a metal box because microwaves don't like metal generally, so they don't penetrate it very well. But we all use microwaves all the time, and some people have converted microwave ovens into primitive weapons that can be done. Now, microwaves are dangerous, and the people that were hit by whatever these weapons are have their lives ruined. They are totally messed up. It has totally destroyed their health. They can barely function. They can barely think. What a sneaky little weapon. And of course, the people that got hit with these things were a lot of national security type people, CIA types, NSA, etc., all claiming to be the reason they got into their work was because they wanted to save their country and, of course, give it to the Nazis, which is what all these intelligence agencies do. They're not saving anything for anybody. They're either delusional, stupid, or a little bit both of it, because the people running their organizations are criminals. And we can see that right now as the criminal so-called intelligence agencies are going after Donald Trump, who basically has done little to nothing, but they want to interfere with the electoral system that this country is all about. So if you're an agent and stating that you're fighting for American ideals, you are one fucked up idiot. So the whole idea is that that's the reality of it. So these are fascist people who took over this country in the late 40s and 50s and have infiltrated every area. And of course, these people were brought in by Eisenhower and other scumbuckets who allowed the pretty much your Gestapo to come in and take over the United States and ultimately rule it. To everybody's detriment. And certainly the, quote, science that we got from these people, what science? All the rockets that work really well? All what? The medical discoveries, everything else? The fraud of bringing in these Nazis is the fraud of what's going on with the thinking of Germans in this day and age, which have absolutely nothing to offer but their criminal attitudes and their Arabic ways. Simple as that. So we've got to understand that. But these intelligence agent people who are crying in their beer how disabled they are and how well they were and everything else, well, I think it's a little bit of karma, maybe even a little bit of justice. But the whole idea is that certainly these people are not on my team and they're not doing anything to keep America safe. They're keeping it enslaved by the lowest group of people, who of course use the second lowest group of people out there, the Mormons, these little scumbucket Mormons who grew up in genteel society and are bought for nickels so they can have another 9 children to add to Mormonism. So the whole idea is that it's a really sick, weird world. So the whole idea is these type of weapons, and again, this is over 20 years ago, so this book is fairly outdated. There's a few other ones which I am in the process of getting that talk about the transfer of energy, etc. But there is some interesting things which I'll cover here quickly and then call an end to this. This, again, will be available to Patrons. Another thing, I believe this was fairly expensive, like $30 for this little booklet. How many pages is it? I guess we can expect that to the government. Of course, 30 pages for 20. That's where your tax dollars go. I'm glad this woman's making money from it. Some little Air Force. I'll edit that. But so the whole idea is that these really ignorant bozo people in the military that have no idea what they're doing, because we feel so secure, don't we? We can't fight it. We can't control the seas. We can't control that. But the whole idea is we go with it. So we don't know. These kind of weapons are used in very select ways. I believe there's a fear in the military. Of course, there always is, because they're cowards. They never win anything, never do anything. They lick the asses of all the enemies out there and give in every time they can. So this is pretty much so typical. And not only that, they are giving information to enemies who they think are their allies, such as the Germans and Japanese and most of the Europeans, who would just love to see the United States destroyed. So the whole idea is that that's it. So we have to understand what's going on. Now, these are, again, microwave weapons are very interesting because microwaves really mess with you. Microwaves are very dangerous. Now, most of the time, as I said, they're directed weapons. I mean, they have to be in line of sight. You can't go through things. So how are they doing this? Now, this is what we're trying to research. There was an interesting thing in this actual, and anybody who's interested in this area should really check out those 60-minute videos on there. But there was one person who they claimed was grabbed by the intelligence agencies, a particular Russian person, who they investigated and who they actually wiretapped and other things, apparently. And part of the conversation is that he was talking to, we are assuming, somebody in the KGB, or maybe it was an American that was killing other Americans. Wouldn't put that past it. After all, these intelligence agencies are in it for themselves and profits, and they are basically Nazis. What do they care about anybody else? Well, they only care about Das Führer. So the whole idea is that that's their process. So we have to understand all that in the bigger picture. But this has been traced to, and one person who was attacked stated that he did look outside his window. It's amazing how intelligence agents don't seem to have anybody checking their area for vehicles, and he couldn't get a license plate and couldn't trace this vehicle down, call the local criminal police department and tell them, hey, put your bribes down and working with organized crime and go after this truck out here. Apparently that wasn't done. And, these kind of things make me highly suspicious. But apparently he saw some truck driving away after he felt these bizarre type. And I'm not going to go into all the details. We'll be here for hours, and nobody really cares. If you want to get further information, do check that out, 60 Minutes, and look into this particular area. So, very interesting. And of course, these people can barely physically function after it. They're pretty much disabled. And having strange things. And of course, these are the things that people have been reported. Again, people were hearing knocks and bangs and all sorts of things. And this seems to be part of the energy, how it enters into your place. You start hearing certain noises. Now, a lot of people claim they're having this kind of effects, and there's a huge group of people who think they're under some sort of, quote, psychotronic attack or directed energy beam weapons. You're going to find this for most mental cases. And of course, we just don't know if these people are actually, but a lot of people who are claiming these attacks to add to their stories. So it's always very difficult. And of course, the credibility of these people, regardless of their suffering, is very low. Most of them are schizophrenics and other things, but that's all part of what they want you to think of this type of technology as well. So, as I said, the Russians were doing this for many years, and there was even a case where they thought maybe the Thresher, which was a submarine, was sunk by the Russians using psychotronic weapons. There's some stories about this that were written. Of course, nothing can be verified. They use psychotronic weapons, supposedly in the dark, and using a particular colored light to affect the psychotronic energy. So it's quite fascinating. All of this, of course, is very advanced, and we just really don't know what anybody has. We certainly do know there are certainly some very advanced tech, but we're not sure how advanced it is or how usable it is, or giving advanced tech like giving psychic training to military personnel is probably the stupidest thing you could possibly do, which was done in the recent remote viewing stuff. I mean, these guys are complete idiots that really should not be giving anything. I wouldn't allow them to cut my grass. But these people had these effects, and they seemed to be particularly able to be targeted. And they were finding that there were certain energies on certain places in their homes, particularly in their bedrooms and the bedrooms of their children and so forth. They were able to find these kind of strange energies, and they had a feeling to it, and they had noises that come in. Very, very fascinating. And as I said, it's a long story. But this seems to be some sort of direct targeting. How do you directly target? And the fact is that if there is a truck outside your house, well, they probably could then shoot through glass into your house, which is glass as well. Your house is not made of metal or anything else that would necessarily shield you from anything. So they seem to be directed in particular areas to affect particular people. They were not affecting like an entire house or apartment building. Now, how do you do this? So I guess if it's from satellites, they could directly take it from satellites and directly hit your house, maybe even hit the window where they wanted to. These things seem to have been coming from above, shooting down, which could maybe confirm some sort of satellite projection. So the whole idea is that this is quite fascinating to think how all this stuff works. Now, how does all this stuff work? The entire field deliberately done so, and particularly in radionics, scalar energy, anything to do with this area has been totally discredited. Now there's even a government agent involved in radionics for the last few years that has been putting out the biggest bunch of crap you could possibly put out in a whole series of idiot books. And this person is confirmed to be working for the Department of Defense and other things, particularly in the computer area. They've also infected radionics to keep it at the lowest possible level with a bunch of Satanist criminals that all work together. They also have corrupted the industry the entire, and of course they push technologies that are crap, like all the things out there, and people who are so-called top practitioners of certain devices who die of cancer and other things. Well, they're claiming this is the biggest healing tool of anything else, which is there is no proof to it whatsoever. But the point is, they've got everybody running around in circles, fighting each other, and nobody works together. This is the classic way to destroy an industry that has been done for literally thousands of years. Fight within organizations, which then they destroy themselves. You don't really have to do anything. So, of course, this is what goes on in these particular areas. So this entire to make sure that it didn't get to a higher level, and this is at the lowest possible level you could possibly get. There are no organizations doing anything in this area. There are fake organizations who are already infiltrated with the German Arabics who are running them, done by PE high school teachers, PE teachers, coach, who runs organizations and, of course, knows absolutely nothing. And so there really isn't any serious, and they want to make sure that doesn't happen by making sure that anybody who is serious in this field, of course, is harassed. And, of course, the field itself is happy to do that. And, of course, it doesn't take much to buy off these coaches and PE teachers. You can throw a few bucks at them, and they've already bent over and parted themselves and lubed themselves up to receive your gift. So the whole idea is that this is the reality that's out there. But this kind of research into these areas has always been going on in the Soviet Union and has been given a lot of support over the years, along with other very advanced technologies that, of course, the Soviets seem to come up with, while of course, the quote Allied or the United States seems to be impotent to come up with. But again, we really don't know what's out there, but certainly there have been hundreds, apparently, of intelligence agents who have been affected by this and continue to be. It's been confirmed as a particular condition that seems not to be like they blame the public. Well, you're just crazy. You're a nut job hearing things. Voices are talking to you. This is common schizophrenic type attitude. These schizophrenic attitudes are plain and simple a put up, because as soon as that you are labeled under the medical mental condition, you lose all rights. You're crazy. You have no rights. So this is what all people around the world try to do, particularly within of course, the Arab Germans who are mental cases and who made sure they pushed their agenda of your Wilhelm Reichs, your Freuds, your Schopenhauer, all these people who are involved in psychoanalyzing, of course, was put there so they could further enslave people by labeling you crazy. But you can't do that until you had a area of fake science to do that. And of course, fake science loves to do that. So the whole idea is you have all these realities that are out there that have to be looked at. But microwave direct energy beam weapons have been around for many, many years. Again, you have to pretty much be able to go through things and how they affect you. You have to target them, so they say. But let's get back here as I close this up to some information that came out in these interviews, which I found very interesting. As I said, they had this guy bugged, and what they got of his conversation that was passed on by the reporter here is the fact that this person was talking on the phone to someone and said, does this box have to be kept on all the time? And he noted that there were a couple of lights on it, 2 green lights when it was turned on. So this is quite fascinating if you think about it. That here is a portable tool, apparently. It didn't appear from the conversation that this was large or that it was any kind of special thing. And this was targeted at a particular person, apparently. So it almost sounds like portable radionic units, or what we call scalar energy or microwave energy weapons, that this guy turned on and left on to affect people. And it was a box in his house. And it appeared to be like this was some sort of, quote, black box, which is an overused term. Not sure where that comes from. Most boxes are not black, but whatever that means. So the whole idea is it certainly sounded like from an educated person in this field that somebody was using a particular type of psychotronic instrument. Quote that these are radionic is a misnomer. Radionic is really a dead science that uses non-electric powers that make them extremely weak. They're basically psychoactive in nature and nothing more than psychic tuners. And while they do work, and sometimes with the right people work amazing, they are not very powerful, and they're certainly not going to affect people as a microwave disruptive field would. So it has to be something past that, and they're actually able to get things to a high level of transferring information or energies from what is a particular type of box to a particular type of person that they have targeted. So it's very, very interesting with all of this, and fascinating in general of what is going on in these fields. And of course, this is just one of many of the new type of advanced weapons that are out there. And of course, these are the microwave and other things. Now, it's amazing how these things are never talked about and being used in common combat, which is a lie. They are using particularly lasers and everything else. And of course, lasers and so forth, if you can actually keep them powered, are very inexpensive to run. Now, we heard that in the attack on Israel by the Arabs recently, is that they spent $1 billion to defend their position when they were attacked at one time. Well, where do you get $1 billion from? You know, that's an awful lot of halibut, Jews. So I don't really know what's going on there. And of course, that means somebody's got to pay this tab. Now, if you use laser beam type weapons, which are effective in some instances and not others, there's a whole science to that, it doesn't cost you anything. If you shoot missiles up that are cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, it doesn't take too many of those to start costing a fortune. You know, war is economics as much as anything else. So these kind of weapons are basically being ran for virtually nothing. Just like the remote viewing programs, regardless of how good or bad they are, the cost involved in them is so low that why wouldn't you do this until you figure out with 100% certainty whether there's value there. And if you listen to the remote viewers, they prove that after their years of research unequivocally. But the problem is that people don't want to state that they're behind that. The closed-minded, goofball, deviant military doesn't want that, and they're afraid of that because it takes the power out of the general's hands and into individuals, and not the fact that let's go just get bought off by a particular weapons manufacturer and work on a simplistic reality that the military and these military contractors work at. So it's a very interesting question. What is all that about? And if you could use these kind of weapons and hit a battlefield where there are thousands of soldiers approaching, or shoot them as they are approaching, hitting them on their way there, on roads and other things, you have just disabled an entire military without even firing one weapon or even spending much money. So there's got to be a lot of research into this, but generally the military is stupid. When General Stubblebind, the guy who was behind all this, looking at different ways of using military beyond just big bang bang, let's blow it up, how bigger bombs and bigger guns can we have, was of course totally harassed for his belief systems, even though he had proof of it, even down to the fact of how psychic power, who he himself and many of his officers were able to easily bend spoons and stuff, something that Amazing Randy couldn't do on his own without using trickery because he was a moron. Let's hear it for him. Yay! We're happy you're dead, Randy. So the whole idea is that all of these things that come into this is a shocking and powerful reality that we have to look at for the future of battlefields, which we have to figure out how to do things in a proper way. So we should figure out, why should we possibly ever figure out how to not start wars? That would be too advanced. So the whole idea is these are part of the realities of everything. So certainly a fascinating area, and this is only one area. Microwave weapons, there are more of these psychotronic type weapons, and I believe there is, similar to what I'm doing, is a hybrid of using what is scalar, radionic, psychotronic energies, where you're using uh, um, electronics as a carrier wave for whatever you want it. You can heal people with it. You can do whatever you choose, bring somebody prosperity, protect them, all the things you can do with it. And of course, like any potent tool, it has its close justice side to it as well. I don't consider it a dark side. In reality, there's too many bad guys and too few bullets. But the whole idea is that this is the reality that is out there. So something fascinating to look at, and I will be reporting back on what I find in books like this in the future, and all of this. Certainly microwaves seem to be these penetrating waves, and apparently, if I am correct, your cell phones work on microwaves, and you put it right up to your ear and everything else. And I remember when I first got my cell phone and spoke on it for a long period of time, that I had a spinning around my head and was disoriented for quite a while, many hours, because of the microwaves that were directed right into my brain. So all of this stuff we're cooking our food with microwave. I'm not sure if there's anything wrong with that. I tend to avoid that, and the fact that since if I'm not sure if something is safe, I don't use it. I use microwaves for a simple task of heating things up for a minute or so. I don't cook in it. I don't do any of that stuff, but microwaves are handy for certain practices. But the whole idea is that certainly not past that. So we have to be careful with technology we know nothing about. But I'm not sure there's anything particularly dangerous. From what I understand, there were some studies done by people. I believe it was by Parcells before many years ago, that microwave ovens did not kill any of the nutrient factor in foods. But I don't know if we should bother with using something we're unsure of, considering we have heat processes that work very well that we know are they must be at least 98% safe. We don't really know because we don't know anything for fact. Nothing you know is real. It's all whatever you're brainwashed to. So if you were brought up thinking that sugar was terrible and bitter, that's what you would taste sugar and you say, gee, this is bitter. Well, that's what you were told to him. That's not the reality of it, but that's what you were brainwashed. So the whole idea is that we all have to understand that in the bigger picture. So it really is fascinating. And as I said, we're going to be looking into this and the amazing areas of the new psychotronics that have to do with the new radionics, the new scalars that have to do with the transfer of energy through advanced tube systems, which are, of course, showing to be the most powerful for transferring huge amounts of information. And, of course, photons, otherwise known as lasers, which can carry huge amounts of data as well. Now, this is not new. I had a fiber optics radionic machine 40 years ago. We weren't able to use them better frequency lasers at that time because they were $10,000. Now you can, and you can move huge amounts of energy. And of course, there's even all of that. So the future, which is the new tech that I'm coming out with, which is a combination of all this, including using large amounts of tube amplification and large amounts of laser energies to transfer these primitive low energy data to bring it up to a very powerful, is certainly the future. And this is, as I said, isn't anything new. If I would have had the millions of dollars that a lot of these idiots have, this would be a tech that would be working today. So we're assuming that even the bogus idiot butt-scratching military, the ignoramuses and a lack of moral reality that any military man has, they're just corporate murderers, have figured this out as well, to a degree. But one of the problems you have to understand is that traditional science is stupid and they live in dumbademia. Dumbademia keeps you dumb. Well, you can't break the laws of physics, Captain. Well, what physics? What physics are you talking about? The contrived physics that were taught in all of the idiot institutions? So the whole idea is that I'm not sure what they have or not have, and certainly these are the worst possible people to give it to. And the scientists give it to the scum military. The scum military turn that over to scum politicians. And we end up with the scummy, evil world that we have right now. So That's the way the world works. So the whole idea is all this area is pretty fascinating. Now, can you replicate the energies coming out of microwaves in a, quote, scalar radionic fashion, psychotronic fashion? So that's one of the research areas to be looked into by the steers. Of course, this is a big area of my personal research, but who has the time and money to do all this as we try and just keep a level of high quality manifesting tools? The main thing in life, regardless of all these other fun areas, is manifesting. Can you manifest what you need to survive? And times are getting tougher as everything pretty much has doubled in cost right now. So you've got to be able to manifest it. You got to be able to manifest good health, because medical care is unaffordable now and insurance companies pay nothing. They always were bad. Now they have nothing. And the bottom line is that all of that is a serious problem. The cost of living is incredibly high. It's not unusual to get any kind of house now that'll be close to $1 million. This is pretty scary. Jobs pay shit and taxes are super high. Your average tax rate around the world, particularly throughout Europe, is 60% the minute you reach $40,000. Now, you can't live on $40,000, barely. So the minute you start making any kind of income, they're going to take 60% of that, keeping you basically in poverty, even if you make $100,000 a year. If you make $100,000 a year, you're going to keep $60,000, which barely is survivable money when you have mortgages or rents that are going to be $3,000 to $4,000 a month in the coming real world. So we have lots of problems, but the big problem, of course, is the fact is, can you stay well? And, manifesting good health using technologies to figure out what can empower your energetic system is very, very important to the entire process. So that's what manifesting science is all about. But manifesting sciences covers everything, and this is an important area. Of course, my course, The Great Work, The Great Path, is a fantastic course to explain all this to you and give you lots of practical stuff. It's an evolving course with lots of new information that's going to be added there, but it really tells you what the world is about, how manifesting works, what the real Gnostic world is all about, and of course, we're getting into practical uses of technologies as well. So the point is that all of this is part of what's going on, and you have to be involved in that. And of course, everybody should be subscribed to this channel. You should be a Patreon member for only $6 a month. You'll get updates. Most information will no longer be put on YouTube or any public place at all. It's only going to go to people who support the organization through Patreon or all access that we offer on our website. So do check that. Of course, you can access our website at the top of our channel page. There you'll see a link and that you can click over to our website and get so many amazing tools, and you can read all the testimonials, how people get fantastic results with the tools that we offer. These are critical in your life. You need empowerment to get anywhere in life. If you don't empower yourself, you will fail. Doesn't matter how connected, non-connected, what kind of degrees you have, all this helps. But there are a lot of people who are highly skilled that can't get anywhere in life, or fail, or can barely make it from check to check, even though they are a, quote, high wage earner. So this is all part of this complete area and something that everybody should be aware of. So until next time.